Quotient is when you have a fraction of two things. So you have a function f divided by another function g. That is a quotient. So section 2.9 deals with a thing called the quotient rule. And the quotient rule is a little bit more confusing. It's not quite as straightforward. So my best advice to you is to rewrite this rule 10 times. If you write this rule 10 times, I promise you that it will be ingrained in your head by the 10th time you write it. It may be a pain, it may take you 5 minutes, but it's the best thing I can tell you to do is just write it over and over and over and over until you're like, well, I know it now, I don't need to write it again. The quotient rule says you take the bottom function, whatever it is, times the derivative of the top function, minus the top function times the derivative of the bottom function, all over the bottom function squared. Okay? So with this, what we can do is we can do the following problem when it's asking us to find the derivative, and I have a quotient of two things. I have x divided by 1 minus x cubed. So here's my first example. If I'm going to take the derivative of this, and delta math is going to ask you to simplify it. Nothing super fancy about the simplification. It should be pretty easy stuff as far as that goes, but I'll show you what I mean. So we're going to take the bottom function times the derivative of the top function, which is just 1. So the derivative of x is just 1. Minus the top function times the derivative of the bottom function, which would be 3x squared, all over the bottom function squared. Now, delta math is going to ask you to simplify this a little bit. So dy dx is equal to 1 minus x cubed plus 3x cubed all over 1 minus x cubed squared. So the final answer that delta math wants us to do is just clean up the numerator, just add the like terms, still going to remain a fraction, so we can't simplify this any further. That's what you're going to put in to delta math. For the AP exam, I would encourage you to leave it like this. Because the AP exam wants to see the process by which you do the problem. Now, if it's a multiple choice, you may have to simplify it. But if it was a free response on the AP exam, you really don't want to simplify it. You just want to leave it alone. You can also do these problems in a very generic way. So here's a generic way to do this one. Here's the second example. So you're given this function h of x, which is the quotient of two things, and you're supposed to figure out what h prime of 3 is. Before we find h prime of 3, we're going to find h prime of x. H prime of x is the bottom function times the derivative of the top function minus the top function times the derivative of the bottom function all over the bottom function squared. Now, all I'm going to do on this is I'm going to start looking at my table and all of the things that I have. If I were to plug in 3 everywhere I find an h, now I can start to look at all these things. G of 3 is negative 4. F prime of 3 is 6. F of 3 is negative 5. G prime of 3 is 3 over G of 3 squared. So all delta math is asking you to do when it says to in simplest forms is just do the computations. For the AP exam, I would just leave it the way it is. Okay. But for delta math, what we're going to do is we're going to do negative 24 plus 15 over 16. Negative 24 plus 15 is negative 9 over 16. So I think this is what delta math wants. But I think the AP exam is going to want to see this. So for AP Classroom, probably going to want to leave it the way the green is. On their FRQs for Delta Math, they're going to want you to get it down to negative 9/16, and I can't think of how I would reduce that, so that one wouldn't reduce. Same kind of thing with this. Remembering, though, that f prime is the slope of f, and g prime is the slope of g. So this is a pretty long one. You're given these two graphs. Okay, you're given these two graphs. But first you're given this. You're given h. And now you're supposed to find h prime of 6. Okay. So you can pause the video and draw a quick graph of f. Then pause the video and draw a quick graph of g that I'm going to utilize. And now we'll do the problem. So it looks like h of x is equal to f of x divided by g of x. So if I'm going to find h prime of x, that would be the bottom times the derivative of the top minus the top times the derivative of the bottom over the bottom squared. Now, if you think about what this is, right now, if we put 6 in for every x that we have, so if you think about going, okay, we're going to put a 6 in here, we're going to put a 6 in here, we're going to put a 6 in here, put a 6 in everywhere we go. So h prime of 6 is equal to g of 6. So let's go to g of 6. It's right about there. Looks like it's 6. Times f prime of 6. Remember, f prime is the derivative. 6 is right here. The slope of that line looks like it is equal to negative 1. So f prime of 6 is equal to negative 1. So we have times negative 1. F of 6 is right here. F of 6 is equal to negative 3. So negative 3. G prime of 6. We already know g of 6 is equal to 6. The slope of this line right here looks like we go up 1 over 3. So g prime of 6 is equal to 1/3. And all that is divided by g of 6, which we said was 6, so that's 36. So for AP Classroom, that's what I do for the free response. If I were doing a Delta Math assignment, which is what this is for, we would really need to say, well, this is negative 6 plus 1 over 36, or negative 5/36. We can do the same kind of thing with this. This is a combination. We're going to write the equation of a tangent line. We did that a couple days ago on the notes. We never used it, but we wrote the equation of the tangent line. So let's look at the equation of a tangent line. first thing, equation of a tangent line. You need a point. So you need a point, some kind of point, a comma f of a, and you need a slope, which is going to come from the derivative, which would be f prime of a. Then the tangent line would be y equals f prime of a times x minus a plus f of a. So this is the notes that you're going to need. You've already written it down probably 3 times now. But now we got to do this with our function g. So let's take this function g of x. So g of x is equal to f of x divided by x, which means that if we were to differentiate this, we would get the bottom times the derivative of the top minus the top times the derivative of the bottom, or the bottom squared. So now we're going to deal with this -1. So it says we're supposed to use this point -1. So when x is equal to -1, g of -1 is equal to f of -1 divided by -1. Notice we're given f of -1 in the stem of the problem. It's equal to 2. So 2 divided by -1. So that means we have the point -1 comma -2. Now to find the slope. So that was for the point. This is for the slope. When x is equal to -1, g prime of -1 would equal -1 times f prime of -1. Notice it was given in there. -4 minus f of -1, which is 2, times 1 over -1 squared. So if we're going to simplify that just a little bit, we got 4 minus 2 divided by 1, or 2. So we got our slope is equal to 2. If we use the equation that's written right up there in red, then we'd have y is equal to 2, that's our slope, x minus -1, that's our x-coordinate, plus -2. And if you wanted to simplify it, you could probably put that into delta math. I think delta math would accept that because it didn't say in simplest form or anything. So either one of these would work in delta math. Hopefully that helps. Go back and watch it again if you need more.